Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, the podcast where we break down the latest developments in Congress. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lenny. Today we're unpacking a slate of bills, resolutions, and committee actions that landed on the floor this week. Let's get into the details.
First up is the No-Cost Breast Examinations and Medicaid Act of 2026, House Bill 8729. Introduced by Representatives Landsman and Dingell, the bill would require Medicaid to cover diagnostic and supplemental breast examinations, including screening mammography, without any cost sharing. If it becomes law, the provisions would kick in a year after enactment, giving low-income women and men access to essential breast cancer screening at no out-of-pocket cost.
That's a big step for preventative health. Early detection saves lives and can reduce treatment costs down the line. The bill has been referred to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, where it will be debated, possibly amended, and then reported out for a full House vote.
Moving to energy security, we have the Energy Threat Analysis Center Act of 2026, House Bill 7305. This legislation reauthorizes the Department of Energy's energy sector operational support for cyber resilience program through 2031 and creates a new Energy Threat Analysis Center. The center would serve as a hub for government and industry to share cyber threat intelligence and develop mitigation recommendations for the power grid and related infrastructure.
Cybersecurity for the energy sector is increasingly critical. The bill also gives the Secretary of Energy authority to enter contracts and agreements to carry out the program. It was reported to the Committee of the Whole House with an amendment, meaning it will be debated on the floor under the rules that allow for a more streamlined consideration.
Next, the Providing Resources and Oversight for Tactical Equipment to Communities and Troops Act, House Bill 8724. This bill addresses the transfer of excess Department of Defense property to state and local law enforcement. It sets up standardized procedures for soliciting input from state coordinators, prioritizes transfers for counter-drug and border security missions, and establishes minimum training standards for those handling the equipment.
It also mandates biennial reviews and reports on the program's effectiveness and compliance. That oversight component is meant to ensure the equipment is used responsibly and that any gaps are identified early.
The Restoration of Employment Choice for Adults with Disabilities Act, House Bill 8736, amends the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It gives young adults with disabilities the option to accept subminimum wage employment if they choose, rather than being automatically excluded. It also streamlines employer access to state counseling and referral services, making compliance easier.
By expanding workplace choice, the bill aims to increase labor market participation among people with disabilities, while still preserving protections against exploitation.
The Negating Neighborhood Noise Act of 2026, House Bill 8717, amends the National Highway System Designation Act of 1995. It allows the use of highway trust fund money to build noise barriers that meet certain criteria, like being on land developed before 1995 or separating highways from residential neighborhoods. It also opens surface transportation block grant funds for these projects and encourages multipurpose barriers that can host renewable energy, electrical, or broadband infrastructure.
So it tackles noise pollution while also creating opportunities for clean energy and connectivity. That dual purpose could make the bill attractive to both environmental and infrastructure advocates.
Turning to environmental cleanup, the Brownfields Revitalization for a Better Tomorrow Act, House Bill 8739, amends the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act of 1980. It boosts funding for brownfields grants and loans, expands eligibility to more nonprofit organizations, and requires the EPA to provide technical assistance to small communities. It also calls for studies on program effectiveness and for the deletion of sites from the National Priorities List when remediation is complete.
Revitalizing brownfields can turn contaminated sites into productive community assets. Think new housing, parks, or commercial space, while also addressing lingering environmental hazards.
On the campaign finance front, the FEC Administrative Improvements Act, House Bill 8738, modernizes election reporting. It requires electronic filing for certain electioneering communications and lets political committees make disbursements using methods other than checks. The goal is to increase efficiency and transparency in campaign finance disclosures.
Faster, electronic filing can help watchdog groups and the public keep tabs on money flows in real time, which is a win for accountability.
The Countering Russia's Forced Recruitment and Kidnapping in Africa Act, House Bill 8718, targets human rights abuses linked to the war in Ukraine. It will create a sanctions list of foreign persons and governments that recruit African nationals for forced combat. Sanctions could include blocking property, export restrictions, and visa denials, with limited exceptions for humanitarian or national security activities. The president retains the authority to waive sanctions if needed for vital national interests.
This is a clear example of Congress using economic tools to address international exploitation and to send a deterrent signal to those facilitating forced recruitment.
The Partners Act of 2026, House Bill 8726, stands for Protecting Authority and Restoring Tools Necessary for Enforcement by Regulatory States. It would give states the power to enforce Medicare Advantage plan requirements, allowing them to set standards and coordinate with the federal government for consistent oversight. The idea is to improve accountability and quality in Medicare Advantage offerings.
State involvement could bring more localized scrutiny, especially in areas where beneficiaries have raised concerns about plan performance.
The House also moved several procedural items. House Resolution 1275 set the rules for debating 5 separate measures and a concurrent resolution. Those measures include the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, House Bill 5625, the Keeping Violent Offenders Off Our Streets Act of 2025, House Bill 6260, the Monitor Accountability Act, House Bill 8365, and the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2027, House Bill 8469. The concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 96, expresses support for law enforcement officers.
While we don't have a policy summary for House Bill 6260, the title suggests it aims to keep violent offenders off the streets, likely through tougher sentencing or stricter parole conditions. The House Rules Committee scheduled these items for consideration on May 12th, so we can expect floor debate and possibly amendments.
House Resolution 1274, on the other hand, repeals Section 11 of a prior House Resolution 1224. The specific content of that section isn't detailed in the source, but the repeal indicates the House wanted to nullify whatever authority or provision that section granted.
Another notable measure is House Bill 8734, which expresses the sense of Congress that medication abortion is a safe medical treatment approved by the FDA, and that federal approval should preempt any state restrictions, including in-person requirements or bans on telehealth prescriptions. While a sense-making resolution, it signals congressional support for protecting access to medication abortion.
The Appropriations Bill, House Bill 8469, authorizes $22.5 billion for military construction, family housing, unaccompanied housing, and funding for the Department of Veterans Affairs for fiscal year 2027. It includes safeguards on how the money can be used and requires notification to Congress for certain expenditures, aiming for transparency and accountability of taxpayer dollars.
The Monitor Accountability Act, House Bill 8365, sets limits on court-appointed monitors. It caps terms at 5 years, prohibits a monitor from being employed by the same employer as a prior monitor, requires public comment before appointment, mandates annual accountings, and transfers cases to a new judge after 6 years. The intent is to ensure monitors act in the public interest and that their oversight remains independent.
Finally, the Cashless Bail Reporting Act, House Bill 5625, directs the Attorney General to publish an annual list of states and local jurisdictions that allow cashless bail, meaning release on personal recognizance or unsecured bonds for certain offenses. The list would increase transparency around bail practices and help the public understand where cashless bail is in effect.
That covers the legislative landscape for this week. Before we close, let's briefly explain how a bill moves through Congress, for listeners who might be new to the process. A member introduces a bill, which is then assigned a number and referred to a relevant committee. The committee holds hearings, may amend the bill, and votes whether to report it back to the full chamber. If reported, the House or Senate debates the measure, can further amend it, and then votes. If both chambers pass identical versions, the bill goes to the President for signature or veto. In the case of House Resolution 1275, the House set specific debate rules for a bundle of measures, streamlining the process for that day's agenda.
That's a concise roadmap. Listeners, keep an eye on the No-Cost Breast Examinations and Medicaid Act, the Energy Threat Analysis Center Act, and the Brownfields Revitalization Act, as they have clear implications for health, cybersecurity, and community development. Also watch the progress of the Countering Russia Recruitment Sanctions and the Partners Act, which could affect both foreign policy and Medicare Advantage oversight.
We'll be tracking votes, amendments, and any floor debates in the coming weeks. Thanks for joining us on Capital Catch-Up.
Remember to subscribe for more in-depth analysis of congressional action.
And feel free to send us your questions or topics you'd like us to explore.
Until next time, that's all from Capital Catch-Up.
Thanks for listening.